Millionaire CEO rescues freezing nurse at 2 a.m. The voice sliced through the icy air like an order that couldn't be refused. "You're coming with me." Camila lifted her gaze from her dead phone, breath fogging in front of her face. Through the curtain of snow, she spotted a tall figure stepping out of a sleek black Bentley. Snow kept falling thick over New York, layering the streets in quiet white emptiness. It was just past 2 in the morning. She had been waiting at the bus stop for more than an hour, after finishing a grueling 16-hour shift at the hospital, her whole body trembling from the cold. "I'm sorry, but I don't think," she started, automatically stepping back. "It's not a suggestion," the man cut her off, removing his tailored coat and holding it out to her. "You'll freeze out here." Alexander Whitmore didn't make a habit of stopping for strangers. At 42, he was the hard-edged CEO of the largest private hospital chain in the country. His $3 billion empire was built on speed, precision, and zero emotion. Yet tonight, something about the exhausted black woman standing at the bus stop, her blue hospital coat too thin for the snow, her curly hair escaping in wild strands from a loose bun, stirred something he hadn't felt in years. Camila Santos hesitated. At 31, and with 10 years of nursing experience behind her, she'd learned to trust her instincts. And everything inside her warned that accepting help from rich, white men on dark streets rarely ended well. But her lips had turned blue. Her hands had stopped working. "Where do you live?" Alexander asked, already opening the Bentley's passenger door. "Harlem," she answered quietly, finally sliding into the seat, letting the warmth envelope her. The car's interior felt like another universe. Supple Italian leather, polished wood trim, a cabin so silent it felt like money had paid to keep the outside world away. She watched as he adjusted the temperature, every move deliberate, calculated. There was nothing casual about this man. "Do you work at the Metropolitan?" he asked, making small talk that felt anything but small. "Bro City Hospital," she said, catching the brief flicker of interest in his expression when she mentioned her specialty. "Pediatric emergency care, burn unit." "That sounds intense," he commented, but something in his tone felt more analytical than compassionate. "How many years have you been doing that?" Camila's brow furrowed. 3 job-related questions in under 5 minutes? 10 years. Why all the interest? He offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Professional respect," he said smoothly. "I admire dedication." As they drove, she couldn't help noticing the expensive watch on his wrist, the tailored cut of his suit, and the exact control he kept over every word, every glance, every breath. His questions kept coming, about hospital protocols, shift lengths, patient loads. It wasn't casual conversation. It felt like research. "I've been in the public health system for a decade," she said, letting her suspicion show. "Even with all the recent transitions." "Transitions?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew exactly what she meant. "The acquisitions. 3 public hospitals getting bought out by a private network." She paused, letting her gaze linger on him. "Whitmore Medical Group," she said slowly, testing his reaction. A muscle clenched in his jaw. "I'm familiar with the company," he replied, voice low. When they finally reached her building, Alexander insisted on walking her to the door. The elevator was out of order, again, so he followed her up 5 flights of cracked stairs, passing peeling paint and flickering hallway lights. Camila turned to face him at her door. "For the record," she said, "you've asked for my full name twice tonight. It's Camila Santos." He slipped a gold-embossed card into her hand. "Alexander Whitmore," he said, as if she didn't already know. Then without another word, he turned and left. "If you need anything, absolutely anything, call me." Camila stared down at the card in her shaking hands. Her heart thudded in her chest as she read the embossed lettering. Alexander Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Medical Group. The same man whose name had dominated the news for weeks. The man responsible for buying out 3 of the city's public hospitals, including hers. The man who, according to every headline, was preparing for massive staff cuts and sweeping restructuring. "Thanks for the ride," she managed, forcing a tight smile as her mind spiraled with 100 different thoughts. Behind her, on the other side of the door, Alexander lingered in the hallway for several seconds, an unreadable expression playing at the corner of his mouth. Slowly, he pulled out his phone. "David, it's me," he said in a low voice. "Run a full background check. Camila Santos, nurse, Bronx Municipal. I want everything, performance reviews, disciplinary records, the works. And David, I want it by tomorrow." Inside her apartment, Camila leaned against the door, heart pounding. There had been something in his eyes, something that didn't match the act of kindness he'd just shown. Cold calculation. The kind of look she'd seen before in powerful men who treated people like data points in a quarterly report. Without hesitation, she grabbed her laptop and typed his name, Alexander Whitmore. The search results made her stomach drop. CEO terminates 600 employees by email. Whitmore Medical Group shuts down pediatric unit to cut costs. Staff speak out, toxic work culture inside Whitmore hospitals. But it was the last headline that truly stole the air from her lungs. Leaked recording. CEO refers to black employees as a human resource problem to be solved. Suddenly, that late-night encounter in the snow didn't feel like fate anymore. It felt like strategy. Looking down at the gold card in her palm, Camila realized something terrifying. She was now on the radar of a man who could destroy her career with a single phone call. 3 days later, Camila was mid-procedure in the emergency pediatric ward when her supervisor, Margaret, appeared at the door, her voice sharper than usual. "Santos, I need a word. Now." Every nurse and doctor in the room froze. The tension was immediate. Camila finished her sutures in silence, removed her gloves, washed her hands, and followed Margaret to the administrative office. Her pulse was already racing, before she even saw the folder sitting ominously on the desk. "We've received some concerns about your performance," Margaret began, unable to meet her eyes. "Concerns? What are you talking about? My performance has always been spotless. You just told me last week I was the strongest nurse on the pediatric team." Margaret sighed, sliding the folder toward her. 3 anonymous complaints. All delivered this morning. Serious accusations. Medical negligence. Camila's hands trembled as she flipped through the papers. Each incident described was technically possible, but none of them had actually happened the way they were written. It was like someone had studied her work, twisted facts, and turned routine cases into examples of incompetence. "This is insane. Margaret, you know me. I've worked here a decade. When have I ever put a patient at risk?" Her supervisor's voice softened, but the words hit like a hammer. "Management is concerned, especially with the new leadership. The Whitmore administration isn't tolerating any perceived risk." The name struck like a slap. Whitmore. Margaret looked genuinely regretful. "Camila, you'll need to formally contest these claims. Until then, you're suspended from all surgical procedures." Camila walked out of the office in a daze. 10 years of flawless work, undone in a single morning, all because she'd met Alexander Whitmore? On the bus ride home, her paranoia sharpened. A black sedan stayed a few cars behind, mirroring every turn. 3 stops before her own, she got off early to test her suspicion. The car kept driving, but in the reflection of a store window, she saw it parked 2 blocks down, idling. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "I heard about your situation at work. If you ever want to talk, I'm available. Alexander." Her hands trembled again. How did he even know? No one at the hospital had been told yet. That night, she called her older sister, Helena, a labor attorney living in Chicago. "Lena, I need your help. Someone's trying to ruin my career. Breathe. Camila. Start from the beginning." As Camila recounted everything, from the snowstorm to the suspension, Helena listened carefully. Then, "Wait," Helena interrupted. "Did you say Whitmore Medical?" "Yeah." "Camila, That company has a reputation. Aggressive acquisitions. They identify key employees at target hospitals and either win them over or destroy them before mergers are finalized. Destroy. Fake disciplinary actions. Forced transfers. They poison the work environment until people either quit or break down. It's strategic. Ruthless. They target people who could resist policy changes, or those who know too much about how things really run. Camila froze, thinking back. The detailed questions Alexander had asked about protocols, shift schedules, pediatric emergency procedures. He asked all the right questions, she whispered. Because I'm a problem. I know the system too well. I know what corners they'll want to cut. Or worse, maybe she was something else. A threat he'd already identified. The weeks that followed, the pressure mounted. Alexander started appearing everywhere. At her favorite coffee shop, my meeting got cancelled. At her local grocery store, I live nearby. At the hospital entrance, just checking in on the new facilities. Every meeting felt innocent, coincidental, but she noticed a pattern. He always knew too much. Her schedule, her suspension, private conversations she hadn't shared with anyone. Their most recent encounter had been at the pharmacy near her building. I heard you were pulled from surgery, he said, with practiced sympathy. That must be incredibly frustrating for someone as experienced as you. Camila felt the walls closing in, and deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. How did you know? Camila asked, her tone leaving no room for deflection. Alexander smiled, casual on the surface but with eyes that stayed cold and unreadable. News travels quickly in the medical world, he said smoothly. Maybe I can help. I know people in management. Camila straightened her posture, masking the tremor in her hands. Thanks, but I'll handle it myself. Alexander gave a slow nod, that same unsettling smile still lingering. Of course. You've always been independent. The way he said it, like he'd known her for years. As if she were predictable. Calculated. That night, for the first time in her adult life, Camila dipped into her emergency savings and hired a private investigator. She needed answers. Real ones. Not the carefully scripted media version of Alexander Whitmore. A week later, the report landed in her inbox. What she read made her skin crawl. At every single hospital Whitmore Medical had acquired, the same disturbing pattern repeated. Key employees, especially outspoken women and people of color, were systematically isolated, demoted, or pushed to quit. Those who stayed and resisted? Mysterious disciplinary charges appeared, followed by terminations. But the part that truly set her heart pounding was this. Alexander had a documented history of targeting black women in leadership or specialized medical positions. 3 different cases in the last 5 years. All intelligent, high-performing professionals. All who'd suddenly lost their careers after crossing paths with him. Camila's paranoia turned into certainty. This wasn't random. This was engineered. And she was his next target. But what Alexander couldn't predict was that with every dirty trick he played, he was awakening something inside her. A quiet, furious determination. Because unlike what he assumed, she wasn't weak. And she wasn't new to fighting for survival. 3 weeks later, Tony Reeves, her investigator, sat across from her at a cramped coffee shop near her apartment. A former NYPD detective, Tony now specialized in corporate surveillance and white-collar crime. Camila, you need to see this, he said, spreading photographs, printed emails, and internal memos across the table. Whitmore isn't just ruthless. He's clinically manipulative. Calculating. Dangerous. Camila flipped through the documents, her heart sinking with every page. The pattern was chillingly clear. For each of the 3 other women Alexander had targeted, the process had been identical. A seemingly innocent meeting. A fake romantic interest. A slow, systematic career sabotage campaign, using fabricated allegations and HR loopholes. Look at these. Tony slid over copies of private text messages he'd managed to obtain from a contact inside Whitmore Medical. Alexander had been referring to her in code. Deconstruction projects, he called them. Her stomach twisted as she read the words. The black nurse is falling into place perfectly. Another few weeks and she'll be professionally done. I'll bet $50,000 she'll be begging for my forgiveness by the end of it. Camila's hands trembled as she put the papers down. How did you get this? Tony gave a small, grim smile. I have my sources. And there's more. He pulled out a folder labeled Williams, Patricia, former chief of pediatrics. She's agreed to testify. She lost everything, her job, her house, even custody of her daughter, after Alexander destroyed her reputation. Camila felt the air leave her lungs. What about the others? Tony's expression darkened. One fled to Canada, financially ruined. The other, well, she's attempted suicide twice. Camila closed her eyes for a second, gathering herself. So this is a pattern. And I'm just the latest target because I'm black and good at my job. Tony nodded. Exactly. It's a twisted obsession with control and breaking strong women who don't fit his mold, especially black women in positions of authority. That same week, Alexander's behavior shifted. The psychological games intensified. He began appearing more frequently, always in public spaces, always with witnesses around to paint himself as the concerned friend or admirer. During one afternoon shift at the hospital, he arrived unannounced, holding a massive, expensive bouquet of flowers. Thought you could use a little cheer, he said loudly, making sure several colleagues heard him. I heard you've been going through a tough time at work. Camila accepted the flowers with a practiced smile, her expression frozen. But when their eyes met, her gaze was like steel. Very kind of you, Alexander. But you really shouldn't have bothered. Of course I should, Alexander replied smoothly, flashing a practiced smile. After all, I am partly responsible for the new administrative structure around here. For the first time, the mask slipped, just a little. His eyes gleamed with something colder. It would be unfortunate if such a qualified nurse lost her job over a misunderstanding. The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. And worst of all, it was public. Several nearby staff members exchanged uneasy glances, glancing between Camila and the CEO, who was now openly flexing his power over her career. Alexander wasn't just making a point, he was making it loud and clear. She was under his control. That night, her phone rang. Helena, I found something. Camila sat upright, hope and fear colliding in her chest. Remember when I told you I'd been networking with discrimination attorneys? Yeah. Well, one of them's tangled with Whitmore Medical before. Turns out, your charming CEO has a fatal flaw. Which is ego. Massive ego. Helena's voice sharpened with satisfaction. He documents everything. Keeps records like trophies, photos, emails, notes about people he's dismantled. Camila swallowed hard. Why? Why would he keep that? Because in his mind, he's untouchable. Untouchable people don't worry about evidence coming back to bite them. Helena paused before delivering the real bombshell. And most importantly, Alexander has bosses. The Whitmore board isn't aware of any of this. If we can gather enough proof, we won't just protect you, we'll take him down completely. Over the next few weeks, Camila moved with deliberate caution. By day, she wore the mask Alexander expected, the anxious, intimidated nurse he thought he was breaking. By night, she became something else entirely. Focused, strategic, dangerous. Through Tony, her investigator, Camila connected with other victims. Dr. Patricia Williams, the woman whose life Alexander had dismantled years earlier, agreed not only to testify but to share hidden evidence she'd held onto. On a late-night video call, Patricia gave her simple but powerful advice. His biggest weakness? He underestimates smart women, especially women like us. He thinks we're too emotional to fight back, too fragile to play his game. Camila also began recording every single conversation with Alexander, thanks to a hidden app that automatically uploaded files to a secure cloud server. Every thinly veiled threat, every backhanded compliment, every moment where his arrogance slipped through, she captured it all. The turning point came one rainy evening when Alexander made his most reckless move yet. A text message. So blunt, so aggressive, even the most conservative court wouldn't be able to ignore it. Camila, I trust you understand that your future at the hospital depends entirely on my goodwill. It would be unfortunate if new irregularities suddenly appeared in your record. Some people just aren't cut out for certain positions. I'm sure a smart woman like you knows exactly what I mean. When Camila showed the message to Helena, her sister laughed for the first time in weeks. Oh, he just tied his own noose. But the real game changer came days later, when Tony called her, his voice low and serious. Camila, I need you to sit down. What is it? I gained access to his private office. I don't have time to explain how, but what I found, this isn't just harassment anymore. This is something the FBI would prosecute. He sent over the files that night. A secret digital archive. Hundreds of photos, videos, personal notes. A trophy case. Each folder labeled with the name of a woman he had targeted. Each file containing details of how he had dismantled their careers, step by step, like some twisted game. Notes like: First contact, chance encounter. Step 2, emotional destabilization. Step 3, professional sabotage. And under her name, deconstruction progressing on schedule. Camila's stomach turned, but her fear was gone now. It had been replaced with cold determination. All the while, Alexander continued his charade, appearing at her workplace with flowers, pretending to be a caring, concerned friend in front of her co-workers. Just thought you could use something to brighten your day, he said, holding the bouquet like a romantic hero. I heard you've been under some stress lately. Camila accepted the flowers with a frozen smile, but when their eyes met, her gaze was sharp as steel. Very thoughtful of you, Alexander. But really, you shouldn't have. The boardroom, 3 weeks later. It was a sunny Tuesday morning when the Whitmore Medical Group board assembled on the 50th floor. Alexander walked in with his usual swagger, offering confident handshakes, ready to deliver yet another glowing report about profit margins and hospital integration. Gentlemen, I'm happy to say our efficiency metrics have exceeded projections. Alexander. The interruption came from James Whitmore Sr., chairman of the board. His tone, ice cold. Alexander froze mid-sentence. Looking around the room, he noticed something different. The board members weren't smiling. Several looked tense. Some avoided meeting his gaze. Before we continue, James said, there's an urgent matter we need to address. Margaret Chun, director of HR, slid a heavy folder across the polished table toward him. We've received substantial documentation regarding your conduct, both personal and professional. Alexander opened the folder with a growing sense of dread. The first page, a photograph of him entering his hidden digital archive. The second, screenshots of the threatening texts he'd sent to Camila. The third, full transcripts of his conversations, verbatim quotes referring to women like Camila as deconstruction projects. His hands began to tremble, his world unraveling in real time. Where did you get this? But even as he asked, he already knew the answer. Alexander's hands trembled ever so slightly, though he fought to keep it hidden. Where did you get all this? He whispered, voice hoarse. James Whitmore Sr. didn't rush his reply. His elderly voice carried the weight of authority and disappointment. From multiple sources, he said coldly, including 3 civil rights attorneys, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and, he paused, savoring the final blow, an extraordinarily well-prepared nurse who refused to be your victim. At that cue, the conference room doors opened. Camila stepped inside, her presence quiet but commanding. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood Helena, Tony Reeves, and 2 FBI agents in dark suits. For the first time in years, Alexander felt his knees weaken. "Good morning, Alexander," Camila said, her tone level but edged with steel. "I assume you remember me. The nurse you tried to dismantle for sport." Panic flickered across his face. This is a mistake," he stammered, looking desperately around the table at the board members who had once cheered his quarterly reports. "You know me. You know my track record." "The accusations," Helena cut in, stepping forward and placing a second thick folder on the table, "are supported by overwhelming evidence. 3 prior victims. Over a year of surveillance. Email chains. Voicemails. Witness testimony. Racially charged threats. And..." She picked up a tablet and tapped play. The room filled with Alexander's voice, loud and unmistakably clear. "The black nurse is playing right into my hands. Give it 2 more weeks, and she'll be begging me to save her career." Laughter, followed by more crude, racist remarks about keeping certain people in their place. Several board members visibly flinched. Margaret Chun, head of HR, closed her eyes in shame. "Alexander, this isn't just unethical," she said, her voice shaking. "It's criminal. Discriminatory conduct at the federal level." One of the FBI agents, Agent Morrison, stepped forward and displayed his badge. "Alexander Whitmore, you are under arrest for violating federal civil rights laws under U.S. Code 18 Section 242, conspiracy to conduct systematic racial discrimination, and criminal harassment." Alexander stood suddenly, knocking his chair to the floor. "You can't do this. I'm the CEO. I built this company." "Correction," James Whitmore Sr. said, rising slowly to his feet. "You were the CEO. As of 10 minutes ago, the board voted unanimously for your immediate termination. All your contracts are void. Your stock is frozen. And you're permanently barred from holding any executive position in healthcare ever again." Tony Reeves opened his laptop, turning it toward Alexander. "In case you're wondering, here's what's waiting for you outside." On screen, 3 live news feeds blared the same headlines. CEO of Whitmore Medical arrested for civil rights violations. Billionaire hospital executive caught running targeted harassment scheme. Leaked recordings show racial abuse at highest levels of healthcare giant. Alexander's eyes darted to Camila, wide with something between fear and disbelief. You don't understand what you've done," he gasped. "You've destroyed careers, jobs, everything I've built." Camila stepped closer, her voice steady and soft, but loaded with meaning. "No, Alexander. I saved careers. I protected lives. And most importantly, I made sure no other woman, especially no other black woman, will ever go through this again because of you." She held up her phone, showing live social media feeds already flooded with messages of support. Hundreds of black nurses, doctors, and healthcare workers from across the country sharing their own stories, speaking out, emboldened by what she had done. "You didn't just try to destroy me," Camila said, eyes burning with resolve. "You exposed an entire national problem. And now, that's going to change." As the agents cuffed him and led him away, Alexander made one final desperate plea. "Camila, I can fix this. Money, a promotion, name your price." She shook her head, giving him a sad, knowing smile. "The only thing I want from you now is the certainty that you'll never have the power to hurt anyone else again." As Alexander was escorted through the building, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, Camila stood by the window, watching the scene unfold. In the crowd below, she recognized faces, other black nurses she knew, women who had suffered in silence for too long, now watching their oppressor fall. Behind her, James Whitmore Sr. approached. "Ms. Santos, The board would like to offer you the role of Director of Quality and Integrity for the entire Whitmore Hospital network. He handed her an official letter. Starting salary, $250,000. Full benefits. The position is yours if you want it. Camilla took a long, deep breath, then turned from the window. I accept, she said firmly, but on 2 conditions. First, I want new protocols in place to protect every employee who reports discrimination. Second, I want a scholarship fund set up for Black nurses pursuing advanced medical degrees. James nodded without hesitation. Done. And for the first time in weeks, Camilla allowed herself to smile. This wasn't just her victory. It was the start of something much bigger. Done, James Sr. replied, his voice firm with finality. As Alexander sat frozen in disbelief, the final humiliations began to hit him all at once. His personal fortune? Frozen by federal order. His professional future? Obliterated. No hospital, public or private, would touch him again. And as he was led away, Camilla stood tall in that boardroom, realizing that cold night at the bus stop hadn't been the start of her downfall. It had been the start of her transformation. Proof that sometimes, true justice doesn't wait for courtrooms or judges. Sometimes, justice comes from one person refusing to stay silent, and having the intelligence and the courage to turn every act of cruelty into evidence too strong to ignore. 6 months later, Camila Santos walked through the polished hallways of Bronx Municipal Hospital with confidence radiating from every step. Now the Director of Hospital Quality and Integrity for the entire Whitmore network, she was reshaping the culture from the inside out. Smiles from nurses and staff replaced the old undercurrent of fear and anxiety. As she rounded a corner, a young Black nurse approached her, practically glowing. Dr. Santos, I just wanted to say thank you, the woman said, her voice full of gratitude. Because of the scholarship program. I finished my pediatrics specialty. I'm working in the ER starting next month. Camilla returned the smile, feeling the weight and beauty of what had been built. The scholarship fund for Black nurses, now the largest in the country, was ironically financed by part of Alexander's confiscated wealth. Poetic justice. In the conference room upstairs, Margaret Chun, now promoted to Director of Human Resources, was delivering the latest employee report. Discrimination complaints are down by 90%, Margaret announced. Staff satisfaction scores are at an all-time high. And we haven't had a single forced resignation or fake disciplinary case since the policy overhaul. James Sr., still chairman, shook his head in amazement. Camilla, in just 6 months, you've erased a stain that's been on this company for over a decade. How can we ever repay you? Camilla smiled, her voice calm and clear. By keeping your promise. Keep doing what's right. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander Whitmore sat alone in a cramped, outdated one-bedroom apartment in Queens. After 3 months behind bars awaiting trial, he'd been temporarily released on bail. But the life he once knew was gone. His network of high-powered friends? Silent. His access to luxury? Cut off. His remaining money? Locked away pending the outcome of federal investigations. At night, he obsessively scrolled through news articles and TV interviews showing Camilla receiving awards for leadership, innovation, and organizational change. Former CEO loses final appeal, faces federal trial in September. Every headline felt like another nail in the coffin of his former life. Tony Reeves, once a freelance investigator, had become a leading voice in corporate accountability. Now head of his own consulting firm, he traveled the country giving lectures about systemic discrimination in healthcare. During a packed session at Columbia University, he used Camilla's case as the blueprint for exposing toxic executives. What she did, Tony explained, was turn every attack into evidence, and every threat into leverage. She didn't just win, she rewrote the rules. Dr. Patricia Williams, one of Alexander's former victims, had also rebuilt her life. Now a consultant to Camilla on the hospital's whistleblower protection program, she said during a staff meeting. For years, I thought I was broken, that I'd failed. But watching what Camila built, it gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever, my dignity. Helena, Camila's sister, was now running her own law firm specializing in workplace discrimination cases, using their legal victory against Alexander as precedent for dozens of other women fighting similar battles. In a television interview, Helena stated plainly, "My sister didn't just save her own job. She cleared a path so that no black woman in healthcare will ever have to walk through this alone again." One cool autumn afternoon, Camila's phone rang. The caller ID froze her in place. Alexander Whitmore. After a long hesitation, she answered, more curious than forgiving. "Camila, I know I don't deserve your time." His voice came through, broken and tired. "But, could we meet? Just once." Later that week, at a modest little cafe in Harlem, just blocks from where her old apartment used to be, Camila sat across from a man she barely recognized. Alexander looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. His clothes were plain, his posture defeated. His eyes, once sharp with control, were now dull with regret. I wanted to apologize," he began haltingly. "Not just to you, but to every woman I hurt. I know I can't fix it, but I needed you to hear me say it." Camila studied him for a long, silent moment. Then she replied, voice low but steady, "You're right. You can't fix it." She stood, gathering her things. "But I already did." With that, she walked away, leaving him in the dim, empty corner of the cafe, sitting in the ruins of the empire he'd once used to crush others. "You're right. You can't undo what you did," she said, rising from her chair. "But you can serve as a lesson. Every time your story is told, other women will understand they have power, that they never have to accept injustice in silence." Alexander lowered his head, tears slipping down his face. "I've lost everything. My family, my friends, my career. But you built something incredible from the wreckage I tried to leave you with." Camila gave a small, bittersweet smile as she reached for her bag. "Not from the ashes," she corrected, pausing at the door. "Despite them. That's the difference between us." She met his eyes one last time. "You thought I was weak. But you learned. There's a kind of strength that no humiliation can break. The kind that grows inside people who know they deserve better, and are willing to fight for it." Without waiting for a response, she walked away, leaving him behind, sitting in the ruins of his own making. That night, from her new apartment overlooking Central Park, a home she'd bought with her first executive bonus, Camila stood by the window, watching the city lights. Her thoughts drifted back to that freezing night at the bus stop, the night that had changed everything. Picking up her phone, she opened her social media app and hit record. Her voice, calm and clear, filled the quiet room. "A year ago, a man tried to destroy me, because he thought a black woman should know her place. Today, my place is in an executive office, where I make decisions that protect thousands of healthcare professionals." She paused, steadying her breath. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who tried to break you. It's turning that pain into purpose, and building something so powerful that their cruelty becomes irrelevant. Within hours, the post went viral. Thousands of women flooded the comments, sharing their own stories of survival, growth, and defiance. Messages poured in from nurses, doctors, students, and women from all walks of life, each one echoing the same truth: that what Camila had done wasn't just about one woman's victory. It was about proving that no matter how hard someone tries to bury you, you can grow back stronger. "Alexander tried to destroy me," she wrote in the caption, "but all he really did was destroy himself. He learned the hard way. Some people can't be broken. We've been through bigger storms, and we came out indestructible." And as she put her phone down, Camila smiled, not for revenge, but for something far bigger: her own peace, her power, and the future she was helping to rewrite for countless others.